Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the WSBA's Crypto Roundup. Ron Quaranta here with my old friend and co-host David Brill. Before we begin, thank you so much for joining us on LinkedIn Live and on YouTube and on X. If you've got questions for David or I, please put them in the chat. We'll try to address them as quickly as we can. Our usual disclaimers, David, obviously nothing you and I are talking about is any sort of investment or legal advice. And really the discussion is our own personal opinions, not necessarily the opinions of our respective firms. David, I've got to imagine as you were imbibing a slow gin fizz last week, enjoying the wins by Michigan. It's still been a busy week. What's going on, buddy?
Well, first of all, just kudos to the Michigan Wolverines for winning the NCAA basketball title. I've been having a craving for Molson lately, Ron, and I'm really looking forward to a couple of cases of Molson from my good old friend Greg Murphy, and I will certainly raise a glass to him when they come my way. But as alumni, we're just really excited about it, and it was our coaches and our players really represent the school well, so very happy about that.
Congratulations, and I got to do an apology shout out to Greg Murphy. I'm sorry I raised it, buddy, but Molson is due. But David, it's interesting. In our last session, a lot of what we've talked about, and certainly there's the geopolitical. I don't think I would have thought about a ceasefire popping up as Greg Murphy. I know. Sorry, bud. I don't think a ceasefire was in our mind, top of mind last Friday, and it is interesting, David, to see how the markets are reacting to this ceasefire per se, and again, avoiding the geopolitical of it or the politics of it. It really does strike me that the most liquid tokens, I'm thinking Bitcoin, I'm thinking Ethereum, they're holding their own. Are you sort of surprised at that?
I'm a little surprised. I mean, I think the problem with the ceasefire is there's a question of whether ships are going through the straits or not. And it sounds like not many ships are. So I think people are really hedging and they're not really sure how to approach it because they just don't know if ships will start going through or will they just not be going through at all. So I think that's where the hedging is. But I do know gold and BTC and ETH were getting a bid, and we're over 72 right now this morning. So I still don't feel like there's a lot of confidence in this rally. I think this could be a big kind of fake out. We could go up a little bit and then sell right off, or if the ceasefire doesn't hold, I think we'd see a sell off pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I want to touch on the implications of the street being blocked, for example. And shout out to Greg again. He had mentioned this in one of our calls, which is it's not just oil and natural gas going through there. There's food going through these ports. So it really is a difficult geopolitical perspective. I just got the note from the producers in the background, David. Josh will be joining us shortly. But when we look at that kind of geopolitical stuff and the impact on the crypto markets, I thought I saw recently someone noting that the volatility, it might have been Kathy Wood from ARK, that the volatility curve is continuing to come down for Bitcoin, particularly, even in a market like this. David, what's driving that? In my mind, it's always been institutional engagement. We've been saying institutions will be coming for years. They're here. Is that what's smoothing out the curve a bit in your mind?
So I think you have this bid from STRC and MicroStrategy that's buying Bitcoin regularly. And I think you have the ETF purchases, and those are a bid in the market, a consistent bid in the market, or for the most part, a consistent bid. So I think we're seeing some of that to blunt some of the volatility. And then before Josh joins in, I would say that, the sellers that have been really compelled to sell have done their selling. So it's really sort of maybe miners and maybe the treasury company or two selling, but it feels like the heavy selling is behind us.
Yeah.
So I think that was, the dynamic, and therefore why we're seeing a little bit less volatility.
Yeah.
But trust me, if a ceasefire goes away or something material happens in the region, I think we'll see the volatility come right back. And especially if it happens on a weekend run, because we know it's either crypto or hype oil contracts, and hyperliquid that are the leading indicators right now.
It is. Josh, welcome. I'm assuming you're in the study of the yacht today. How have you been?
I've been great. Thanks, guys. How have you been?
We're
And
doing
it
well.
is true, even though I just itched my nose as I said that. Like I have been great. Um,
The signals that Josh gives off as she's like, I'm good, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
no, I
Short.
feel
No,
like I just itched, and then I was like, no, not now. Like, because when you like learn these things, then it's kind of like I don't know. So I have a question for you guys.
Go
Like,
for it.
David, when you say the volatility is coming back, should folks at home be thinking like, well, that's a good thing? Like, often we hear about volatility and crypto, and people are like, oh, well, it's so volatile, you can't trust it. Like, when you say the volatility will come back, were you, first of all, even talking about digital assets since I joined a moment later? Because you could have been talking about the price of oil or any number of things.
Or
But
football games. Who knows?
yes,
no,
exactly.
I was just saying, Josh, that if we have meaningful moves in the Middle East, that the volatility will come back. So
Yep.
if this ceasefire goes away, I think volatility will come back. We'll see a sell-off. So things like that. It's like geopolitical driven volatility.
And to preface that, Josh, the reason that came up was I had noted to David that some of the data seems to indicate the overall volatility, the long-term arc of volatility for BTC. And I referenced Kathy Wood from ARC. She might have said this, apologies if she didn't, is actually coming down. And David, we've talked about this. When we look at volatile geopolitical situations or economic shocks, Bitcoin is off. I think it's off 17% year to date. It's not doing 50, 60, 75% drops
Yeah.
anymore. And to me, that is the telltale sign of being enmeshed in global financial markets.
I would mostly agree with you, Ron, but we're still probably 50% from the high, or maybe like 40% from the high. So we
More
still,
enmeshed.
we still have some longer term volatility. It feels
Yep.
like 60 or 70%, even if it's 40%. But so I think
volatility going up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, David, look, I'm with you. I guess my point is maybe it's the three of us have been around this space for so long that we're not jaded at 30% drops when
No.
some people in the media still panic. We've seen 90% drops in the past.
And also the altcoins really have taken it on the chin. So that volatility has really been intense.
Josh just silenced me about talking about volatility. So we're going to move to alts.
And when you said a 90% drop, I was like, oh.
Yeah. I'm going to be optimistic.
Not manifest that.
David, you opened the Pandora's box, David, of alts. So I've got to ask. We've been talking about use cases associated with alts and where alts would or wouldn't get traction. I don't see the alt index. It's not clearly in alt's favor, but is it taking a long time for alt to get traction, the ones that at least have use cases, because of the economy and global events, or is it something more systemic?
I think it's really tied to the Bitcoin and Ethereum price. I think if we see Bitcoin and Ether, start going on an uptrend, that we might see, alts also go up. Yeah. But I think they're really tied to Bitcoin and Ether right now. But again, like we've said on a broken drum, the alts, some of the really quality projects keep building. There's more utility, there's more integration. So prices are back in 2020, but they're the utility of the projects are really in 2026 and meaningfully better.
Yeah.
So I do think there's this interesting dichotomy that's going on there.
Yeah. I'm assuming David's on the hotel Wi-Fi, Josh. That's why we keep losing him a little bit.
Oh, I am. Yes, I'm in New York. I'm here in the city, and you'd think we're in Manhattan, the Wi-Fi would be okay, but
it's always
what are you
David,
do?
Josh. No worries. David, Josh, I wanted to talk a little bit about. I did it again this week, David, as the three of us always text about. 8:30 this morning, we got CPI data. At 8:30 and 30 seconds, my head sort of exploded because, of course, the data came out as inflation is up, and media portrayed this as a cataclysm. It's tariffs, it's the war, it's Straits of Hormuz. When you peel back the layers of the data, core CPI is actually down. David, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember the number. I think it's like 2.1 or 2.2%. Ex energy, but you add energy in for obvious reasons, inflation goes up. I'm still so concerned about the accumulation and the calculation of that data, David. How do you anticipate, and Josh, you as well, how do you anticipate firms responding to news like this in the crypto space?
I
To
mean,
respond.
oh, go ahead, Josh. No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, please.
No, I want to hear what you say first.
Look, I think people are going to still build. I mean, I don't think this really affects them on a day-to-day level. I do think that if people thought that we'd get extra liquidity in the market and the Fed printer going burr, and interest rates getting cut, I don't really see a path for that right now.
Yeah.
So there's going to have to be another way for liquidity to come in, because I mean we have rising inflation, a slowing job market. That's not a combination to be lowering interest rates, because if you lower interest rates, then you'll get more inflation. So I don't think that is part of the equation right now.
But do you believe those inflation numbers? I'm doing it again, David, but because that's a true issue that we face.
Yeah, I believe the energy numbers, and I believe the energy numbers, probably because it's a lag, are probably worse than what we're seeing. And I think they're worse in areas, especially in like certain states where there's high taxes on gas. So like we may have elevated prices for oil and gas in Florida, but in California it's like double, because they have like $5 of tax or $4 of tax for a gallon of gas. So I think certain states and certain areas are going to be feeling it a lot worse than others.
Yeah. Josh, I've got to assume the Klayman family office is responding to the economic data. What did you want to add to this?
I mean, well, I defer to you guys on the accuracy or inaccuracy. Just to build on something that David was saying, though, about whether it matters to builders. I think not only the question of whether it matters to builders, but also for sort of large TradFi and others who are very, at this point, the wheels have started moving and they've said that they're going to be doing certain things. I don't think they're stopping. I don't see it slowing down, at least not from my vantage point. What I do say is maybe the traders, like if you're someone who is trading on this data, I think maybe it's a lot more front of mind. And I think you guys, being economists and being traders and all sorts of other gurus and crystal ball readers, you're it's very close to you when you see these. But I would say I'm not sure that both for the average person, or for certain people who are downstairs coding or wherever they are coding, or certain large companies where they just have a mandate for future proofing and for finding new revenue streams, like I don't know that they're going to be stopping.
David, does this mean we could put Guru in our signature lines now on emails and stuff? Because I mean, if Josh says it,
well, then it has to be. I don't know. In my very corporate role, I don't think they'd go for that, but maybe maybe on LinkedIn I can like get away with that, or on X.
Brill, Guru.
I don't know how quickly HR would show up if I like put that in my MD and Guru. I don't think that would. I don't think that would last very long. So
my wife's in the other room. I'm definitely going to hear it. Using the word Guru frequently.
Yeah,
Josh, you're getting me in trouble already.
I think maybe on your headline, Ron, on LinkedIn, you can see that in.
Can you imagine the hate messages? Josh, but it is a good point though, because from your perch, and I'm sorry to digress, but I wanted to raise this question to you. It's not like your pipeline of business is drying up.
No, not at all. It's like it feels like it's actually happening the other way. Yeah. So that's why I just think, I mean, I guess that we could also say, as you guys often say, the data is backwards looking. So even if it were going, I guess some people will be influenced by it, many people, including, policymakers and others. But I just think some things, once the wheels, like someone once said to me about something that like nothing to do with our space or nothing to do professional at all. It was actually quite personal. But someone was saying, the wheels of justice move slowly, but they've started moving. And I feel like I put that into the context of these large, behemoth entities and the deals that they're striking and the plans that they're announcing and the sort of, what they're moving towards. And while they might move slowly, once they actually are in motion, I think
Right.
they're hard to stop.
Yeah. It's interesting, and it makes me ask the question. I keep coming back to it, David, and I'm going off script entirely. I have it in front of me. I have no idea what we're supposed to be talking about, but I'm seeing more and more of the use cases. Some of those use cases are tangential to AI, for example. Josh, you and I have spoken about this, and it just makes me feel like once we get through the headwinds, it feels the wrong word. My anticipation is once we get through the headwinds of some of the stuff that's happening, geopolitical stuff, economic shocks, potentially employment changes, we should talk about that as well. There really is a significant upside, it feels like, is building, David. Do you agree with that perspective?
Yeah, look, and Mark Andreessen was talking about how crypto is like the great uh, currency for AI and AI agents to
Right.
use. No, I really think there's a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of progress that's being made. It really leads me to the question, though, as I think about it, is like, what is going to be differentiated enough for people, for AI agents, AI, and other people to not just use stable coins? Like I worry that besides using Bitcoin and ETH, are stable coins kind of eating the rest of the alts lunches a little bit, and that's something I think about quite a bit.
Yeah. Is that the case? I mean, what's your perspective on that?
Well, I think this is the reason why we need to see other, token projects like with use cases really being incorporated into our daily life and into the economy, into
Yes.
the business economy. Otherwise, it's just going to be too easy to be as a default. Oh, I'll just use, USDC, or I'll just use Ripple's stablecoin, or Tether's US stablecoin. So I think that's something that I think about a lot.
Josh, to that point, I guess I keep bringing this phrase of headwinds. I'm avoiding the obvious, which is we're still waiting for clarity. And, the three of us will be joining a contingent of WSBA members in May. We're visiting DC. We're not lobbyists, folks, just to be clear. But I guess the more time goes by, the more that seems to be slipping away. We had Adam Goldberg on a couple of episodes ago. Josh, let me start with you. Like, what's your anticipation of where that goes and how the industry responds if we don't get the Clarity Act?
How the industry responds if we don't get it. So I think that if we don't get it,
Yeah.
the industry response, while internally many will be very disappointed, and we can understand why, I don't think outwardly that's going to be productive for the industry to be saying. I
Yeah.
think if we don't get it, then we continue to move forward and we use the guidance and the other building blocks that we
Mhm.
have to keep going so that we have momentum. Because I think one of the things that I'm saying like the royal we, right? But
Mhm.
that I think we want to do is to make sure that all the progress that's being made cannot be undone somehow. And again, you guys have heard me say like it's a lot easier to prevent seeds from being planted than to rip up an entire forest,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think that there will be that kind of dismantling writ large.
Yeah.
But still, I think to the extent that it doesn't come through for us now,
Mhm.
we should continue to try for the future. But I think in the interim, I I would imagine that it won't be that productive to be just publicly saying, "Oh no, the sky is falling," right? Like
Right.
the focus should be, I think, on okay, let's work with what we have. What else can we get from regulators? Maybe that doesn't require new law, but additional guidance. Continuing to work with Crypto Task Force, the Innovation Council at the CFTC, right? Like all sorts of things, continuing to develop that and continuing to build and work on matters.
Yeah, and you referenced the guidance you were talking about, which is guidance from SEC, guidance from CFTC. We don't easily seeing those being dismantled per se, and if Adam Goldberg's watching, I'd love him to chime in by chat. David, Josh, we've got to get him back. But you can imagine one of the other headwinds or concerns, David, is the midterm elections. And again, we don't get political per se, or wide sweeping change in who holds power in both the House and the Senate changes the calculus a little bit, correct?
Yes, and I think if we don't get something in the next like 30 to 45 days, then we don't see anything before the midterms.
Yeah.
But I do want to remember we do still sort of have a call option here on regulation with the SEC and CFTC
Fair.
guidance and their rulemaking, and I do think, like Josh said, that following that rulemaking and the incorporation into the trading ecosystems that encourages, I do think though that part of the ecosystem will be hard to rip up. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's a zero-sum game for us. But I mean, it is preferable to have a bill that suits the industry, passed. But let's see what happens. I just feel like there's so much, regardless of the bill itself, I just feel like there's so much rancor between the parties. I also worry, like, is there a willingness to pass something bipartisan this late? And is there a concern, like, do Republicans get an oversized amount of credit for the bill getting passed, even if it's done on a bipartisan basis, so close to the election? Now, of course, we don't think of it in a partisan way, but we can't be blind to it.
Yeah. Josh, did you catch the traders term that David weaved in there? We've got a call option on regulation. Very, very, very slick. David, Josh, so let's dig into a couple of other, and I keep using the phrase headwinds. Someone out there can tell me to shut up and stop saying the phrase headwinds. For anyone watching, Josh will be one of the panelists on our quantum webinar happening on April 28th. And Josh, I wanted to ask you I want to talk about the headlines. And again, I don't mean to be bashing media here, but some of the headlines we've seen in the wake of the Google report on quantum is, paraphrasing, crypto's doomed. Bitcoin's doomed. Harvest now, decrypt later. Josh, you've got an amazing evolution of that phrase that you heard somewhere. Is that hyperbole as well, Josh?
I mean, I think as we discuss quantum, we should also bear in mind that there are efforts for quantum proofing, right? So yes,
not just bad guys using quantum.
Yeah, I think, and I think my understanding is government agencies and others, are focused very much on how do we protect, like what do we do? I think of it in my mind as like a patch, right? Like how do we shore up in the face of quantum computing? And so I think, no, I don't think that the gloom and doom scenarios are accurate. I mean, frankly, depending on the day or the month or the year, haven't we all been hearing from people who as a way to dismiss crypto, just say, oh, well, when quantum comes, it will all be gone, right?
Yeah.
I do think that boogeyman is a lot closer than it once was, right? In terms of time horizon. And certainly, as you know, the harvest now, decrypt later, but also things like there was a gentleman, his name is Dino, I can't think of his last name, but he said a UN agency. And when I was at the Houses of Parliament like a week and a half ago, he was giving a presentation where he was talking about in the identity space, right, with identity and digital signatures, this idea of harvest now, forge later. So yes, there definitely are concerns. And I think, even as we talk about tokenization and moving to distributed ledger technology, and moving the payment rails, and we see commercial banks and frankly central banks around the world doing all kinds of proof of concepts and other types of initiatives in this way, as well as, there are live projects involving tokenization in industry. I think we need to think about, I think it's a board level risk, right? What does quantum mean? How do we work this into our architecture, into our plan? How do we disclose to investors, consumers, whatever the risks? But I don't think it's the end of crypto.
The sky's not falling.
I agree. One thing I would say though is, although this remains to be seen too, to me, the quantum risk feels more real than what felt real at the time, but I do remember even then being like, really, is anything going to happen with Y2K?
No.
I wouldn't make it the equivalent of Y2K, but I think between the absolute doom and gloom and the nothing burger Y2K, it falls somewhere in the middle.
Weren't you like 3 or 4 in Y2K? Like you young. This shows you how advanced Josh was. Josh, totally kidding. I got to do a shout out to Adam. He agrees with David on the timeline, just harkening back to our conversation about clarity, critical next couple of weeks. Think why you see Besson and Armstrong coming out recently. Adam, we've got to have you back. Time is running out. Really good points. Josh, I just want to come back to that because I do want to deep dive a little bit on it. And for everyone watching, if you're interested, our quantum webinar, April 28th, it's on LinkedIn, it's on Twitter. If you have questions, drop us a note. info@wsba.co. You'll get to see Josh Klayman, Annalyn, and Christina Dolan diving into the complexities of it. One of the things I've seen recently, Josh, and I haven't really looked into it too deeply, is this idea that some organizations are putting forward quantum safe Bitcoin. And the trade-off for quantum safe Bitcoin is really high transaction fees. And I'm probably messing up the numbers. I think something like $150 a transaction. Again, I don't know the economics of it per se. Josh, is that one of the solutions? Hard fork Bitcoin for something that's super expensive, or am I going a bit too far afield?
I mean, I think, again, this is like the quantum proofing question. Yes, right. I think that is a solution. I think, one of the things that I understand with this quantum safe Bitcoin, although let's face it, like this is new, really. This is not something that's been like I've been studying for like a long time.
And you still know more about it than most people. So
thanks, Ron. But I would say, like, I believe that what the quantum proof Bitcoin idea is getting at ways to withstand Shor's algorithm. So Shor's algorithm is basically the algorithm. Christina Dolan and Annalyn can, wipe me on the floors explaining this better. But basically, this idea that you could take a public key and derive a private key from it. Yep. So the idea is like to upgrade the cryptography to withstand a future attack using Shor's algorithm. So yes, I think it is possible. I think I'm just checking right now, actually this moment, and I see that there is this article from today, which I just saw on CoinDesk. This may be what you're referring to. Yeah. Quantum safe Bitcoin now possible without a soft fork, but costs $200 a pop, new research shows. And it's a Starkware researcher. And this article is by Sam Reynolds. So if anyone's looking. Yeah, I mean, like I said, people are looking into solutions.
Yeah. David, I've got to pull you into the quantum. I don't know how much you've researched this, but I've got to imagine, did you make a deposit on the first commercially available quantum computer? Did I see that correctly?
No, but I have been thinking about it a lot. And I do think, while like it's an issue for crypto, just think about all the ways that we secure our TradFi data and our TradFi, SMS for 2FA and all the ways that we're using things. So I think it's an issue for all of financial services. And I think we talk about it more in crypto because it's something we think about a lot. But I think there are a lot of bigger vulnerabilities on the TradFi side that they're dealing with now. And I do agree identity is an issue. And look, it's something that certainly should be on our radar. And I agree with Josh. It's higher level than Y2K. Yeah. But there are a lot of people with vested interest to figure this out, and I have faith that they're going to do that. But I think it's good that we can all learn up on it and be aware of it, and also not sort of espouse like the sky is falling, because we know enough about it to know that smart people are really thinking about it and how to deal with it.
Yep, that's the call, folks. April 28th. Register for Josh's webinar, WSBA webinar. Josh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, while I'm not like super, as you can tell, super well versed in the quantum resistant Bitcoin latest and greatest, although will be after this call, I would just note I'm happy that it's actually coming on people's radar in a meaningful way who are
Mhm.
trying to solve for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because before it used to be thrown out as, why would I even look into crypto? Because it's all going to be wiped away. Like now it's like people who are working on solutions are proposing solutions. And I do think it's important that people be aware of this. So I'm happy to see, the right minds,
Yeah.
bright minds thinking of this.
And Josh, it makes me think about, as I look at some of the material you've written and some of the things we've been putting together, I also think that a lot of the concern and fear about quantum really underestimates. It's very expensive to do. It's very energy intensive. There's severe environmental constraints. There's still a lot of challenges just to commercialize quantum, but the first instinct is the sky is falling. So it'll be interesting to see the webinar. I'm looking forward to moderating that group. Josh, thank you so much. David, Josh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to, that made me think of something. And yes, I think commercializing quantum, yes, could be very expensive. What I do think though is we don't, and I've said this on our prior sessions, we don't know how far along our government is or China's government or other hostile
Yeah.
state.
So state actors are the issue.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. Yes, of course. I'm sure there are going to be, criminals everywhere, and anywhere. But unlike what I think about although all caveats apply to what I'm saying, as always, I think about, say, AI, right? And open source AI, and how someone can put in all kinds of safety mechanisms, but then someone can relatively cheaply fine tune it and do some nefarious things. I think of quantum a bit differently. I think of these are, and I may be wrong on this. I'd love to hear, the thoughts from Christina and Anna on this point. But to me, when I think about who's going to be doing these things, I think about very well capitalized players, including hostile states. Yes.
Yeah, we're not going to be ordering quantum computers on Amazon anytime soon.
Or running OpenClaw.
Running OpenClaw, which we will talk about, David. Josh, David, thanks so much again. April 28th, everyone, please register. It'll be a great, great session. David, we joke about your crystal ball, so I've been trying to make myself smarter just knowing the two of you, just to keep up. And one of the things I've been looking at is I'm trying to look at trends and different flows. David, I'm digressing away from quantum, but I saw something interesting. David, I wanted your perspective. Centralized exchange activity is the lowest it's been in 2 years. We're down something like 6.5%, 7%, down to $5 trillion. I'm struggling to understand what that may or may not be a signal of. Is speculation being drawn out of the market because of ETFs? Or are we looking at a buildup of buy and hold, anticipating a bullish upswing? Do you look at data like that, David?
Yes, I do. I do. And it kind of ties into something else you're going to mention a little later on about one of the exchanges. And so I think there's a combination of things. I think one issue is a lot of people are buying ETFs, and they're using traditional exchanges for that. Two, look, the sentiment in crypto right now is not great. I don't know where the fear and greed index is, but it's not great. Altcoins have unfortunately been punished the last 6 to 9 months. And I think if you look at the totality of things, that's what you're really seeing. So and also the last thing is, we've talked about prediction markets, and AI is very sexy, and it's taken some of the liquidity from crypto and it's gone into prediction markets.
Yeah.
So I think, and just as an anecdote, I made a small wager on a prediction market about Michigan winning the championship. And so
he won't let Michigan go.
No, I'm really loving this. Hey, listen, it's been 30 something years since they won a championship. I think I have a few runway days of airtime to keep running with it. But look, it's very easy to do. And there's so many different things that you can do in real time. I can see how it kind of captivates a certain crowd.
Yeah.
So I think the totality of everything has led to the exchange volumes decreasing.
Yeah, David, I just want to touch base on fear and greed index, which I've now given up on because I'm looking at one now that says 44, which 100 means everyone's in on Bitcoin and it's great. And I've seen another one that says 9. So fear and greed indices are some of the most subjective things that I've seen. Josh, what do you think on anything David just said, not including the fear and greed index?
Well, I mean, talking about fear and greed for a second, that's what went into my mind. I just was thinking for a second, I thought, well, who's fear and who's greed? So,
And now she gets philosophic with us. I can't keep up with the brain you have, Josh. David, I'm glad that you raised. By the way, Josh, as an aside, David's comment that Ron will be talking about this exchange later, I totally forgot until he raised it. So, David, thank you.
so funny.
The cue. So everyone's seen the news. We have no economic interest in them, and they're not members. But Gemini, the exchange founded by the Winklevoss twins, who've been long members and long participating in the crypto space, has been having problems. The IPO, I don't think, helped, David. It's been down significantly, and the word out is that Ripple has thrown them, I don't want to call it a lifeline because there was a really interesting take on it, but it makes me go back to Warren Buffett's old phrase, and I'm paraphrasing, which is, when the tide goes out, you see who's standing in the water naked. And I don't want to impute anything to Gemini other than it's a tough business, exchanges. David, Josh, what are your thoughts on, is this the beginning of a wave of those that can't make it go away, and the survivors are what's left to grow the industry?
What do you think, Josh?
So I think that's always the story, holding aside from Gemini, right? Like holding aside Gemini, that's always the story. Like so many projects, so many companies fail, so many, like some succeed, some merge, some are acquired. And sometimes these are excellent things. I mean, we see, for example, I can't remember the name of the entity that was acquired that was a Coin Fund portfolio company, but now Chris Perkins is CEO of Cantor Crypto, right? Yeah. So like sometimes these acquisitions are, incredible. What I would say also is I think it's important to remember with Ripple, if I remember correctly, didn't they also bid for Circle? Right.
I'm trying to recall. I might have someone in the audience might be able to tell us, but I think so, Josh.
I think they were bidding with Coinbase for USDCF for Circle. I think that's right.
So I think, to me, I think that my sense, I don't have any inside information, but my sense is that Ripple will want to make some kind of big plays anyway. Now, whether it is a lifeline to Gemini, I mean, I don't know any information beyond what's in the press. Certainly, we did see like a group of senior executives leave at once, and certainly post other types of announcements, going public, etc. Things have perhaps not performed as people might have once hoped. But I do think that, okay, without answering your question directly, because I don't have specific information. And even if I did, I think I'd be cautious about how to say it. But I think just looking at Ripple for a second, and I don't want to link it to the price of XRP or anything like that. I would just note that it seems like they have been wanting to make some kind of big play.
Yeah.
Right. To sort of, as you're saying, evolve, move forward. What's the next thing? Because I do think in our space, as in many spaces, and I don't mean this about any entity or any person, but it's evolve or die, right?
Yeah.
So what is the value? And it could be that it's a rescue, and it could also be that there are some important strategic synergies, and that maybe they think they can get it for a better price.
Josh, I just want to point out, for the record, if I've asked a dumb question, you can absolutely say that on air.
No, it wasn't dumb. Not at all. Not at all.
Kidding. David, I jump in here because I absolutely agree with you, Josh. One of the things that I think is interesting, and I'm not misremembering who posted it this morning. It might have been one of the publications. It might have been CoinDesk or Forbes. I don't remember who. But the gist of it, David, was that it's not a lifeline per se, but it's actually a distribution deal for Ripple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a really smart take, because it suddenly opens up the strategy around, we can help you out. The price of that help out is RLUSD and getting it out there to customers. Is that a smart play, David, strategically?
Well, look, it's a distribution channel, yes. And look, I mean, I think Ripple has a good stablecoin product, and they want to get it on the market, and they want to be competitive with Tether and USDC. So there's obviously different ways to go about it. So I think, they're being strategic here. I think a broader issue is that, we've talked about a convergence with TradFi and crypto.
Mhm.
And we always thought about it in terms of like a big move and buying a big, crypto exchange and paying top dollar for it. But maybe this is an instance where there's some convergence where, not every company is succeeding, and there's an, opportunistically having a chance to buy something, at a decent price, or, at a discount, just because
Yeah.
of the way the company's performing. So again, I definitely have no inside information. I'm just going by
Sure.
what we're reading. But look, I mean, there's oftentimes if companies are struggling, another company come in, they'll see technology they like, and they'll want to acquire it. So it's
Yeah.
just interesting. And I think we thought there would be a premium paid for crypto exchanges to be bought by TradFi. And in this case, that may not be the case.
Agreed, David. And I think part of that might be also, if you look at the activity again, the quote unquote lifeline from Ripple, they've had to close business down in Asia and Europe, for example. So it certainly takes, from a valuation perspective, that certainly pulls the number down, I would argue. David, Josh, we're coming up on time soon. I feel Josh wanting to say one more thing. So Josh, go.
I was just going to say, well, once you call it a lifeline, that seems to have downward price pressure of itself.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's one of those things. Headlines are what they are, and they don't always just report the news, but sometimes they influence the news.
That is 100% right, Josh. And I have used the word lifeline way too much today. David, Josh, David,
I meant like if that's what the headlines are saying. That's what I meant.
Oh, believe me, both. David, Josh, I want to end off with a couple of things. One is, we didn't talk about options, David, and I'm assuming you've got some large option positions that expire today. It's a big number today, David. It's 2.2 billion across BTC and ETH options. Kind of TradFi level numbers we're talking about. What's your take on those expirations?
I mean, it's a really interesting time right now because we just don't know what's going to happen, in the Middle East. And so we don't know what announcements may be made after hours on Friday, as we've seen a few after hours announcements after trading. So I think people are being a little cautious and just protecting themselves and, selling calls and things like that. So I don't expect big movement before the market closes. After the market closes, that's a whole nother story, I would say.
It's not helping my sleep to wake up at 2:00 in the morning and see what's happening in Asia trading, David. I've got to stop it. David, Josh, we're almost at time. Josh, David, we've got busy weeks coming up. I'm still working on our Washington trip. We've got webinars coming up. Can't tell anyone what, but Josh, you and I have talked about this and corresponded by email. We're launching 2 new working groups, which is going to be really, really, really interesting. And I want to end off with one thing before I ask you both what the week ahead will look like for you. And this will sound provocative. I literally do not care who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Am I the only one?
I mean, look, I think there's a great curiosity about who it might be. I do think people are curious and want to know. I did read that article, and it just felt like a lot of circumstantial evidence. It felt like a dartboard, and it was all around like the orange and yellow, but nothing hit the red. That's how I think about that article. I don't know how you think about it, Josh, but that's how I felt about it.
I think Josh is Satoshi, but she just doesn't want to admit it.
I mean, I'm not touching that wallet. No, I'm just kidding. but yeah, I think
people heard it.
I mean, I think I don't really care who Satoshi is either. I mean, part of me, like, would it be interesting to know? Sure, it'd be interesting as a historical fact. But I would hope that, I feel like years ago, if someone would have found out it was one of the people who said it was he, right? Yeah. People who shall remain nameless, maybe that would have had potentially a negative effect on the token. At this point, though, I mean, even if and when we find out someday who it is, if that ever is the case, I feel like, Bitcoin is a machine that runs itself. It has a life of its own. And we might feel differently, though, if Satoshi's wallet starts moving, right? We might feel differently. depending on, if long dormant things happen. But in the absence of that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a machine that runs itself.
Fair point. David, Josh, we're almost at time. David, you've got a busy week, and if I recall correctly, you're one of the many experts speaking this coming week, correct?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to doing the fireside chat at the Brown Rudnick 4th Annual Crypto Conference next Thursday. So I'm flying back to Florida tonight, and I'll be back in New York on Tuesday. And really looking forward to that and seeing a lot of friends and colleagues in the industry. And I know it'll be a very robust conversation. And Robert Stark, who's a partner at Brown Rudnick, will be moderating it. And he's moderated a panel for WSBA. And
Yes.
he's fiery, and he really likes to mix it up. So I'm looking forward to a very compelling fireside chat.
As I told a colleague who asked, I said, he's sort of no BS.
Yeah.
Josh,
Very
what about
much
you?
no BS.
Josh, what about you this coming week?
This weekend I'm going to San Francisco for a day to speak at the VEX conference that Ryan Singer put together. And so the VEX Markets conference, I'll be talking about tokenization. Mm-hmm. And then next week, I actually was very fortunate that someone gave me tickets to Paris Blockchain Week. So I will be going there. I've never been to Paris before. I think I may have even said that on here before, that, I studied French for a bunch of years and had to memorize where all these like l'Arc de Triomphe and all these things were. Like, for you guys, you know what I'm talking about in school. You had like the geography of all the national monuments. Mm-hmm. I've never seen them, so I guess maybe I will drive by them next week.
Just want to point. It's going to be a great trip, Josh. You'll have to send pictures. David, I just want to point out, you have to have a private jet to say, I'm going to San Francisco for a day. I mean, I don't know anyone who goes to San Francisco for a day, but Josh, safe travels. David, Josh, we're going to end it there. For everyone in the audience, thank you so much for joining us. If you've got additional questions for us, info@wsba.co. David, I wanted to leave with one last thing. I'm going to dive into Claude Code this weekend. God help us all. We'll leave it there. See you next week, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.